everybody, and welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. I'm Molly Herford. I write about all things fitness and health over on theoutdooredit.com, as well as for a bunch of different magazines and books and websites and all that jazz. And I also do a lot of those things.
And I'm Peter Glassford. I'm a registered kinesiologist and an endurance coach, and I'm Molly's co-host here on the Consummate Athlete Podcast.
And for those new to the show, also married to me, so there's that.
Yes.
I realized a couple weeks ago, a bunch of people don't know that, so just wanted to put it out there.
Well, our bickering should probably
tip them off, yes. Anyway, what have we been up to lately? We're back in Canada I've been back for a whole week as of today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been skiing and some gym work, and you've been yogaing in preparation for yoga training.
Yeah, yoga teacher training starts in a month, so I'm kind of trying to get back to yoga most days, so I'm not like the student in the back of the classroom pretending to do stuff, so I can actually be good at it.
Can you be good at yoga?
I was going to say, I know that's not the point of yoga.
I think you just failed.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to get kicked out. Anyway, other than that, lots of stuff going on. We're excited. We have the Joyride 150 Women's Weekend coming up in Markham, Ontario. I think they actually still have a couple openings, so if you're a woman hoping to get into BMX or just play in a bike park.
I think for anyone. If you want to get better at riding a bike, like this would be the place to go.
Women, though. It is Women's Weekend.
I mean, for anyone, but not if you're not a woman, then you can't go
till
like noon on Saturday. But
Sunday.
I mean, what?
It's totally closed.
No, that's not true. It's open at noon on Saturday.
See, the bickering. Should have tipped you off.
It's
anyway.
Open.
Anyway. I'm pretty excited. I have a new everyday BMX bike from Performance Bike. I just put it together earlier this week. I'm super stoked to get it out in the bike park. So look for a lot of videos and photos coming from both of our Instagrams and on Twitter and stuff over the course of the weekend. I'm hoping to do a bunch of skills videos for Shred Girls with some of the rad BMX girls that are going to be there and doing some of the coaching.
Yeah, so you've been doing a lot of posts with the real life Shred Girls,
yeah.
So just, quote unquote normal young ladies and I guess young adult ladies who are on bikes, and you're doing that at shred-girls.com. And you could probably just Google even real life Shred Girls.
One of these days I'm going to pay the thousands to get shredgirls.com. It is available. So if anyone wants to bankroll that, message me. Anyway, speaking of messaging us, though, we are starting to book out a bunch of talks and clinics. So nutrition talks, lady part
yeah, we're out in middle and western Canada in July, it looks like, and then you've already booked a bunch of sort of clinics and talks in, I guess, the northeast, but New York area coming up soon, though. That's in
March and April.
Yeah, early April.
So if you're a bike shop or a bike park or a club that's looking for clinics for mountain bike or cross even.
And I think we'll probably be down maybe August or June in like the more south, right? Like it's not even south, I guess, but central.
Yeah, our
Central
schedule,
Eastern.
At any rate, our schedule is getting a little crazy. I don't think we really need to give them the geographic locations that we might possibly be.
Right.
If you're interested, get in touch and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, and as always, that same format, consummateathlete.com, we had some really good recommendations for episode sort of questions, episode topics, and then also guests. We're trying a couple of different things. We're approaching episode 100.
Dun, dun, dun.
So just trying to keep it fresh. So if you do have, you want to see a short episode or like a super long episode or, an episode with this certain person again or new person or yourself or whatever, the ideas as we get to 100 are definitely welcome and appreciated. But thank you, as always, for listening.
Yeah. Today's guest, actually, if you've been missing some of the more sport-specific episodes, I think today's is actually a really good combination of some kind of general training advice plus sport-specific, because we have Nick from Stronger Golf.
Yeah, he's over from the UK. We were actually very close to Nick and just narrowly missed him, which I was sort of bummed about when we were in Europe in October, November. But yeah, he does golf specifically, and I always love when people actually like niche themselves out and say like, this is who I work with, rather than I work with everyone. Mm-hmm. He works with golfers, and just
that's what they're called.
Whether there's a lot of injury prevalence, back pain, that sort of stuff in golf, and then also just we all want to drive that ball further, right? And so he works with people on improving that. He played was pushing for sort of PGA, pro golf, but, just didn't have the stroke and was plagued by injuries himself. And he's sort of parlayed that into a really successful in-person personal training business. And then also he's doing online training, and they have a bunch of like a webinar and stuff like that too. If you just want to check out, he's got a great Instagram page. So as always, we'll link to that show notes and then also at the end of the episode. So
yeah, and I mean, I'd say even if you're not super into golf, I mean, everyone, like, let's be real, we all want to crush at a mini golf sometimes. So, if you're, even thinking about that, this is good. But I think also it's just good to kind of hear how someone is teaching stuff for a specific sport and think about how you could apply that to, whatever your main sport is.
Well, and that's really our goal here. I guess my goal, and I'm hoping people get behind it with this show, is that we're looking at all these different sports for things that we can use. There's a very mental aspect to golf, and we've now done, this is our third golf episode.
Which is funny because we don't play golf.
Yeah, but I mean, we went to the driving range last year. We usually play, as you say, a couple rounds of mini golf, and I would definitely go golfing more, especially now that we're here more. But to me, it's the mental aspects. The conditioning aspect here with Nick is very interesting. There's a lot of common themes. Strength training doesn't need to be something kooky. They do some ball throws against the wall and stuff, but a lot of it we're just talking the same squat, deadlift, push, pull. And so it's those common themes, to give people, if you're a cyclist or a runner, there doesn't need to be like these magical maneuvers that you're doing, right? So I think that's some of the transfer that we get here from Nick. But also, if you are specific to golf, he does share some, specific things that you need to do to overcome sort of the loads and, golf, you're only swinging one direction and things like this, right? So,
yeah. So anyway, enjoy this episode, and as always, hit us up on the website, on Twitter, on Facebook, if you have any questions, recommendations, comments, and of course, we would love you forever if you rate and review the podcast, which you can now do in the app.
In the app. And we're coming on episode 100. So if you got ideas for that, I think that's not next episode, but maybe the one after.
Oh, man.
So this might be 98, and then the next one's 99. So we're coming up.
Oh boy. All right, let's dive in. Enjoy this episode with Nick from Stronger Golf.
I cycled a little bit when I was younger, young. And then I've done a little bit of obviously cycling in Britain the last 10 years maybe has been pretty good. So yeah, as far as the sports science side of things, they've probably led that more than any other sport. Dave Brailsford and British cycling have led that. So yeah, like a lot of the stuff around recovery and periodization and things that are coming out of this country seems to be based out of those guys. So yeah, it's an interesting world that I've seen a little bit of a glimpse into recently.
It is. It's odd, though. We're still, in my opinion, and I think you would relate to this, I think cycling is still, we're not doing enough strength training and just sort of, general preparation, which, golf is similar, and I guess that's the mission you've tasked yourself with.
Yeah, a little bit. I think golf is, we'll dive in, but I think a little bit of it is they either don't know what to do or are scared, or they want to be very specific, it's how's this going to make my golf swing better? Right. It's like, well, it's not, essentially. I'm going to give you, I think there's a guy over here called Mark Bull, who is a golf biomechanist, which basically means he the kit EA Sports use to make computer games?
Sure.
He's got something like that, and he'll hook people up, and they'll swing the golf club, and he'll produce a computer-generated image of their golf swing. And he put strength conditioning to me as you provide the widest canvas possible. You provide the best foundation, and then me or the sport-specific coach or whatever will take that foundation you've made, and then that player is then more able to do whatever we want them to do in the golf swing.
Right.
But yeah, in itself, it is just general physical preparation, and I suppose it's probably the same in cycling. They just don't really want to do that. They want to just sit on the bike or swing a golf club.
Everyone does, yeah. And my main clientele is the sort of, I guess, time crunched is the phrase in cycling. But I mean, there's golfers who aren't professional golfers, right? And they're going to ask you the question, why should I spend 30 minutes or 60 minutes of my golf time, or my activity time in the gym or, doing these exercises?
Yeah, I mean, ironically, it definitely applies in terms of if you're not on tour, you're kind of trying to hold down a job. You need to practice quite a bit. It's a skill-based game, and then it takes 4 hours to play around. There's a lot going on. I mean, ironically, though, I think kind of golfers do go in the gym, and they end up doing this kind of highly specific, maybe quite isolationist approach. And actually, that takes longer.
Right.
Why would I fix your ankle stability, your hip stability, your mobility issues, and then do some work to get you stronger when I could just get you to do a split squat and kind of solve a little bit of all of those three things in 10 minutes of kind of a couple of sets. And then a lot of what we do is about getting them in and out the gym as fast as possible, having impacted them, having obviously driven a training effect, but impacted them as little as possible so they can still go and swing a golf club. Some don't mind playing with soreness, others will absolutely hate kind of doing that relatively technical motion whilst sore or feeling odd.
Right.
So it's just oftentimes it's kind of trying to educate them that actually the general stuff is probably more efficient in that way.
Sure. So I wonder, I want to dive into all parts of this, the injury, the, what you experienced as far as things improving and stuff. But I wonder, can you give us, we always like to start with, or at least get an impression of how people, what their sporting background is. So, start in, elementary or grade school and, how did you get here?
Okay. Well, I sort of played starting out, I played pretty much fairly standard sporting kid, I suppose. Played pretty much every sport that kind of was available. I think I was just quite good at sports, kind of fairly naturally. Anything that involved hitting a ball, kicking a ball, racket sports, things like that, I seemed to be quite naturally good at. So I probably played pretty much everything up until I was about 15. Didn't really start playing golf until I was about 14, 15, and kind of really quickly decided golf was what I wanted to do. So back at that time, I guess I had aspirations at least of playing professionally. I wasn't anything hugely special. I played kind of county stuff, played some mini tour stuff a little bit later on. I kind of had a bit of a stab at playing professional golf when I finished school. So when I was kind of 17, 18. And then kind of just found that really hard, to be honest. Playing for a living is very different to playing for fun, especially when you're kind of down the lower end of things, let's say, and you're kind of playing to eat, and your financial livelihood is on it. Kind of that didn't work out, let's say. I found that kind of professional sporting environment really quite tough. So that didn't work out. I went to university and actually kind of stopped playing golf, stopped doing many sports at all, really. But to that point, I hadn't trained for any sports, hardly at all, either. So somehow I ended up at university in the gym powerlifting. And I kind of powerlifted for a couple of years, got very into the training side of things. That's where I kind of, I suppose, acquired most of the knowledge, qualifications, etc. that I kind of rely on now.
Powerlifting is sort of your bench, your squat.
Yeah, so bench, squat, deadlift. Whoever lifts the most wins. There's zero movement quality or anything fast about it. It is literally, whoever wins the most, 3 attempts at each lift, whoever lifts the most wins. It's a pretty brutal sport, to be honest. but yeah, so I did that for a couple of years, and I was kind of started to get back into golf a little bit, and I kind of obviously was very into the fitness stuff, and I just naturally kind of ended up combining them together a little bit, I suppose. And at the time, the golf fitness as a thing, I suppose, was just starting to come about. I guess TPI had just started to happen, was just starting to gain a bit of traction. And at the time, the golf fitness world was very, very rooted in rehab. So it was a lot of physical therapists, a lot of physiotherapists, and was very much, I suppose, quite an isolated approach to fitness. It focused on fixing certain movements, reducing lower back pain, that kind of stuff, which is all well and good. But it was very specific, I suppose, is what I'm trying to get at. It left out a lot of those general movement patterns, and it left out a lot of the kind of basic strength and conditioning tenets of, let's improve force production, let's get stronger, let's get more powerful, let's improve the force you can put in the ground, and you'll hit the ball further. So I guess at the time, really, I wasn't playing golf. Powerlifting, hadn't done any kind of fitness stuff that the kind of golf industry was saying this is the stuff you should be doing to improve your golf performance. I'd just done squat, bench and deadlift, and I started playing golf again a little bit and probably hit it 40, 50 yards further. I'd gone from someone that probably wasn't long enough to play professional golf, in all honesty, to, I definitely added 40, 50 yards to my t-shirt. I was thinking, if I'd have known this then, I might have had a better chance at making it as a pro.
Right.
But so I kind of just from there sort of wrote a few articles online one day, not really expecting anything to come of it. I just made a kind of very small WordPress blog, wrote a few articles, just kind of saying, I think what we're doing at the moment is missing something, basically, as golfers. I think there's stuff you're missing, and I think there's stuff you could do better, in terms of your exercise selection and the way you organise training and the way you go about training. And yeah, it really just kind of went from there. I got asked to write for a couple of online magazines. I was quite lucky, and kind of the timing of writing for those online magazines was probably perfect, and I got a fair amount of exposure from that. From there, TPI asked me to write some articles for them, and I've been pretty much doing that on and off ever since. And then the kind of whole thing grew out of that. Started writing a lot more frequently on my own blog. Then I started putting kind of online coaching services together and that kind of thing. And that's pretty much how we got to today, I guess.
Okay. And what does TPI? I'm familiar with it, but it stands for like Titleist.
Okay. Yeah. Titleist Performance Institute is what it stands for. So I'm not, to be honest with you, not 100% sure about how it kind of came about, but basically Titleist is a brand. It's a golf club manufacturer. So I assume that Titleist put the money in to get the initial kind of project off the ground, if you like. So Titleist Performance Institute. And
it's like a conditioning, like a certification, or it's more of like an assessment tool?
So they've got it's kind of quite wide scope now. Basically they do, all of their stuff is aimed at the kind of the supporting professionals rather than the golfers themselves. But so they have a level 1, which is a general tool kind of aimed at everyone, which is a movement screen. So pretty basic. Gray Cook's on the board, so there's a fair amount of overlap there, let's say, between FMS and the TPI level 1 screen. And it is, so basically all of your kind of strength coaches that want to be TPI certified will go through that. All of your kind of technical coaches, golf swing coaches that want to be TPI certified will go through that. And then there's a medical string to that as well.
Okay.
And then they have level 2 and level 3, which are kind of, you start to specialize in your specific stream at that point. So they'll have a swing coach and fitness stuff.
Okay. Now, are they like? Do you see them sort of becoming more aware of this sort of like general strength training idea?
Yeah. I mean, we definitely. So, like I say, I started writing for them. I'm going to sound a little bit like I'm taking credit for this. I'm not. There's quite a few people that have probably been involved in gradually moving the industry in that direction. But yeah, I would certainly say if you go back on their website and look at their early stuff, it is very much focused around kind of, okay, let's say you do this in the golf swing. Let's say you sway in the golf swing. The reason you do this might be because you have poor hip stability and your glutes aren't particularly active. Your glutes need upregulating. And here's some kind of basic low-level glute activation drills to attempt to address that. Kind of fast forward to now, you'll see a lot more articles that are kind of like a weighted carries. How can doing a weighted carry benefit your golf game kind of thing? A lot, basically, I think a bit of a shift from that kind of very specific training into more GPP, into more general physical preparation, and just kind of educating golfers as to how that can help. Because I think the thing, maybe GPP isn't kind of where everyone needs to be, but I think when you're talking about golfers as a population, they typically don't have the greatest training experience in the world anyway. So they do need GPP.
Right. Like you described, you said you hadn't trained and you were, an aspiring pro, right? You said you hadn't trained before you got to the powerlifting.
No, I kind of dabbled with gym work, but more out of vanity than anything else. To be honest, there certainly wasn't, when I was coming up anyway, there wasn't much kind of available on what you should do or even whether you should do it.
So what injuries then, I come from cycling where it's, it's maybe not obvious all the injuries, but like we have obvious risk. Whereas with golf, it seems like the risk from, catastrophic acute injury is low. So what type of injuries are people dealing with in golf?
Yeah, so, it's kind of all the research around golf injuries. There's not a huge amount, but what there is would tend to put the kind of overuse injury figure at somewhere between 60 and 80%. So essentially, the golf swing is asymmetrical, fast, and rotational, and it wears you down. Particularly if you kind of compound that with what we would term suboptimal swing mechanics, swing faults and things like that, can kind of change that wear pattern a little bit and maybe make the body break down a little bit faster. But basically, you're looking, lower back pain is the big one, shoulder issues, hip issues. I would say really most of the stuff we see is fairly similar to the kind of desk-bound population stuff that we see, but it just seems to happen a bit faster with golfers because I think the swing, like I say, it's fast, it's highly rotational, and it just wears you down that bit quicker.
I think that makes sense. I mean, there are probably people, the typical golf person is, someone who's, been probably spending time at a desk, I would think. In the stereotypical way that, it was the businessman's choice for recreation.
Of course.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you have overuse injuries, and, it's interesting that you say that because, I mean, part of why I was interested was so if golfers are looking at this general preparation, and our podcast is really designed around, trying to be, I guess, ready to play any sport or activity, right? So that was part of the reason I was attracted was we do have listeners that like golf and we've played golf and gone to the driving range a few times. So we want to be sort of aware of this, but the fact that you're talking about this like general strength, sort of, similar to what I'm, hoping people will start doing more and more for cycling, and it sounds like we're talking the same sort of language on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So everyone, you can talk about injury, but it's not sexy. It's not, it's not exciting. Everyone wants to know about that drive, right? So, I mean, you had that 50-yard increase. Is that something you see, across, or how else even would someone see those benefits to their performance through this general strength training?
Okay, so I think in terms of, if I kind of deal with it in two parts, there's the strength training bit in terms of what that can do to your performance, and then there's the kind of more general. Let's be honest, in terms of golf, everyone just wants to talk about driving it a long way. As far as the kind of strength training stuff goes, how does that help? Really, it's force into the ground. The more force you can develop, the stronger you are. The more force you can put into the ground, the more force you can put in the ground. The golf swing is, even though golfers don't like this, in that respect, it's the same as every other sport in motion. The more force you put into the ground, the faster you go, the further you go. When you're sprinting, the more force you put into the ground, the faster you go. When you're cycling, the more force you're pushing down onto that pedal, the faster you go. Even in a free throw in basketball, it's about force from the ground generated up into the hands, kind of viewed like that. If you take the movement out of it and just think about the force, most sporting movements are pretty similar. So I think that's where that general strength training in terms of performance, that pays off there. And the other thing is we kind of go in, we run through different corrective exercises, different regressions, and we kind of try and give, like you say, we kind of deal with that office-bound individual more often than not, and we're trying to give them back kind of some movement and some ability they probably lost. We're trying to give them that full gamut of movement options, if you like, and that's going to allow them to kind of go and swing the golf club the way they want to swing it, and allow them to have whatever technique they choose, or their swing coach is choosing, that they feel is most beneficial to them.
That makes sense, for sure. So they're in the gym, and we're talking about this sort of time-limited person. They only have so much time to be on the course. Like, in your programming, is there any, like, do you combine technical training? Like, and when I say that, I mean like golf-specific training. Like, would you putt during the recoveries, or do you do anything like that to sort of combine and maximize that time, or you sort of get in the gym and get out and separate them? Yeah,
to be honest, I've always dealt with it. I'm a golf coach. I'm a qualified golf coach, kind of somehow ended up doing that. So I kind of, potentially never really kind of looked at it from that kind of point of view. Could you combine them too much? I've always been of the kind of opinion, I think the industry comes from that very specific background, and we're trying to get away from that almost a little bit. I've always been very much of the opinion, this is general physical preparation. I'm going to kind of go and give you that canvas to be the best athlete you can be, and then I'm going to hand you off to the coach who's going to deal with kind of putting the sports specific skills on top of that. There's some overlap there for sure. So if I'm working on giving someone more T-spine mobility, and if I'm working on their rotational mechanics in a med ball throw or something like that, that's going to look to them like elements of their golf swing. I'm not cueing them to kind of try and improve their golf swing. I'm not talking about their golf swing, but sure, it's going to look similar, and it is going to probably carry over to some extent to improving their technique.
Okay, I was wondering if you did any sort of med ball twists or anything. I know some people, when we start talking about, we should just be pure on strength, they don't do much in the way of sort of med ball throws or twists. But I always thought, med ball throws are a pretty safe thing, and really a pretty, when you talk about functional, like basic human movements, like throwing is just something we have to do sometimes, right?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at what kind of like you said, I my basic human movements, as I consider them, are kind of squat, hinge, push, pull, lunge, twist. So a couple of them start to look a little bit more like a golf swing. Anyway, we do med ball throws. I guess generally what happens is I'll take a client kind of as they progress, if you like. I'll start. My aim is to take them from, I guess, very sagittal, plane dominant stuff, and progress them towards more linear and rotational stuff that probably could be considered more specific. Yeah.
All right. I think that makes sense. Now, I guess in that same vein, I'm cheating because I've read articles that you've written. But is there, if someone wanted to, I feel like this is what the typical sort of thing you would expect from sport specificity would be, like a heavy golf club or a weighted golf club, or like putting a band around your golf club and trying to do twists or something, or some sort of heavy swing. Like, how do you stand on that?
Okay. So there is, as far as the weighted stuff goes, as far as the band stuff goes, let's start there. I don't do any of that. I think there is potentially, and this is probably for someone else to say yes or no on, a good golf coach really. To my mind, there seems kind of like the band R&T techniques that we'll use in the gym to kind of shift knee valgus and things like that. I think there's an element of some of that stuff could be used by a swing coach to kind of improve technique. But I don't view that as kind of my job. I don't put a kind of a band or a cable and have them swing the golf club or mimic that swing, simply because there's probably a swing coach whose job that is to kind of improve their swing. And I, don't want to tread on his toes. He's got probably different ideas, and I don't want to kind of get involved with that and get involved with kind of cueing to improve their golf swing. And the other thing is, particularly when we're working with better players, they have a golf swing that works. They're quite good. So I don't want to do anything that will kind of impede that motor pattern, When I'm getting them to swing a golf club or swing a cable stack or something like that and mimic the golf swing, yes, the movement looks the same, but I've kind of forgotten about the forces involved at that point. And by having that band and adding resistance, I've completely changed the kind of that movement. Really, I've changed the way my weight shifts. I've changed the tension on muscles at different ranges of motion, and we have kind of that Tudor bomber idea of a competing motor pattern. And like I said, particularly with better golfers, that their swing probably works quite effectively. I really don't, as a strength coach, I really don't want to mess that up. I'm going to try and stay away from the kind of technical element of that as much as possible. So yeah, that's kind of my justification for staying away from a lot of that stuff. I don't see the risk reward being worth it.
Okay, so now on the same token, we're talking about building strength and putting force into the ground. So to confirm, like, do you do much in the way of sort of balance, like standing on, Bosu things or, things like that? Or are you saying sort of you don't really go down that?
Very occasionally. Yeah, pretty athlete dependent on that, to be honest. So if I have, the only stuff I really do kind of unstable surface is kind of balance and ankle stability drills. If I have an athlete that needs that, I will use it.
So
if they
like
progress
maybe
to that point.
Someone with like a, either a flat foot or someone with like a ankle sprain history or something like that.
Yeah, pretty much. Because if you kind of, obviously golf swing, you have a lateral weight shift. So if you think about what happens at the ankle during that lateral weight shift, you have to have some inversion and eversion in order to keep your center of gravity within your stance width, if you like. So yeah, it's in some cases they'll need some of that stuff, but I'm not doing what I would consider strength and power exercises on a stability ball or on a Bocey ball or anything like that. I'm kind of keeping those things very separate.
And it's a small component. It's not like your main lifts of the day aren't like a squat on a half ball or something.
Exactly. I think there was an element in the kind of golf fitness world where balance is important, and jump on that kind of train doing exactly that. Yeah, I mean, even for those clients that need it, it's one exercise at the end of their warm up. So it's 20 seconds work, and then go on, basically an activation drill. Kind of get them to feel good foot position, get them to feel what that is, go pick up something heavy.
Right, yeah. No, I had a client asking me if she should buy a Bosu, and I was like, no, like, you can just like stand on one foot or do, any number of one-footed exercises, and I'm sure this will be challenging, right?
I mean, I think that's the kind of, I need balance, I'm going to stand on a basic balance, like, but you're a golfer. You're constantly on solid ground, and you're on 2 feet. Balance is not that important to me. Right. There's a little bit of research kind of around baseball that suggests static balance for pitchers is useful to a certain extent, which may transfer to golf. You never know.
You wonder though, like would a single leg Romanian deadlift, where you're sort of having to change your posture on one foot or something like that, right? Or even some plyometrics using single leg or something. Yeah,
I mean, there's that kind of, okay, let's say if single leg balance is useful to the golf swing, still doesn't make, like you say, the kind of unstable surface the best way of going about creating that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So now if someone was going to start, like where do you start with someone? They have zero strength training experience, they're a golfer, they come in. What are, is there somewhere that you start on day one as far as what, an exercise or a routine they might start with?
So I'll typically screen everyone that I see for the first time. Just kind of, I like that idea. I think it's Mike Robertson idea of kind of lazy coaching. Regards, if I get the exercise selection right, they should almost cue themselves, and I don't have to cue too much, and they'll learn the movement themselves. So I'm kind of quite big onto the screening because I use it as just that. It's information gathering for me to kind of pick the best exercise for them, or the best exercise progression. So I will screen them, and we'll do kind of some of the stuff from the TPI level 1 that we talked about, some FMS stuff and some other bits and pieces I've kind of picked up over the years in that screening. And then I'll pretty much have them go through just some basic body weight patterns, just see what a push-up or what a plank looks like, what a split squat looks like, what bodyweight hip hinge looks like. And then we'll kind of basically, if the pattern looks good, is kind of up to my movement standard, we'll just start loading that in that session. If it doesn't, we'll kind of implement a bit of a corrective strategy maybe. And then we go from there really. But I think there's an awful lot of that stuff when they first start is just body weight really. I think a lot of golfers maybe kind of want to get to the kind of, like I say, the fancy sports specific stuff where they're maybe throwing a med ball or they're jumping from side to side, stuff that looks cool on Instagram and stuff that looks kind of relevant to a golf swing to the naked eye, as it were. And often what we're doing is kind of holding that individual back and going, okay, you need the basics first, earn the right to get to that stuff. And a lot of that is just body weight, and it's just teaching them to control motion, keep that, again, going back to that kind of typically desk bound individual. It's, keep that core nice neutral canister position, move at the hips, move at the shoulders, better breathing mechanics, that kind of stuff. Just trying to lay good foundations, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like you say, the screen, the body weight motions are essentially, for a lot of people would be a workout in themselves when you start, getting down onto the ground and doing a push-up, and then, you're going to do a lunge, which is tough for a lot of people, and then maybe some overhead, with a broomstick over your head or something. Those are going to be challenging motions, right?
Yeah, sure. I'm kind of. It's a bit sad maybe, but even kind of the younger guys that we have coming in, that you kind of think, yeah, they're in kind of to look at, they're in reasonable shape, and you get them moving, and the amount of we have that can't do a proper, nicely controlled push up, and kind of their split squat doesn't look that comfortable. There's a bit of knee valgus going on, there's a lot of hip shifting going on. There's a lot of kind of, you see a lot of people that can't do those basic movements. And like I say, they kind of a lot of times also want to get to that fancy stuff, and it's about holding them back and just saying, get the basics first,
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's say, is there a common problem that you see, in a lot of these desk-bound athletes when they come in? When they start strength training for the first time, but is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, so I think it kind of the typical one we see is the most easy to explain, kind of from a golfer's point of view, is they have a term golf coaches use a lot called S posture. S posture is basically that kind of extended lumbar spine. So in golf posture, when you're bent over a little bit, kind of, if you take the whole spine, it forms an S, which is where that S posture terminology comes from. So they talk about that and kind of how it limits rotation and how that can cause back pain in the golf swing, etc. Basically, because you're rotating too much from the lumbar spine, and the hips and the thoracic spine aren't kind of doing a lot. They're tight, and the lumbar spine is picking up the slack. And that kind of goes hand in hand. I think that's often maybe been viewed as a golf swing fault, but that kind of often goes hand in hand with this guy that sits at a desk all day. Hip flexors are very tight, potentially breathing mechanics are kind of all over the place. They walk in that kind of extended lumbar position. Their movement strategy to do squat, lunge, stand up out the chair, etc., is to extend at the lumbar spine. So they're going to do that in the golf swing. And then if you kind of look at Stuart McGill's work, and we know that kind of repeated extension and a repeated rotation of the lumbar spine probably isn't good for their spinal health. That's the kind of perfect storm, if you like, that golfers have going on there. So I think that's probably our number one thing that we see, thing that we're kind of tasked with correcting, if you like, to get right. Back pain is, there's some ridiculous figures regards kind of back pain in golf. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's a couple of studies at least that have given kind of very high figures on that. And to me, anyway, my opinion, that does come down to kind of that poor postures as a result of sedentary lifestyle. Right. And then you add rotation on top of that, and things don't look nice from a movement point of view, and that just wears the body down. And a lot of what we're trying to do is, yes, kind of correct that, and yes, add some strength and power and things, but a lot of times all it really comes down to is kind of giving them some context to their movement, educating them as to where they are and where they need to be and why this hurts. And that's pretty, I think, a big part of kind of what we do, and almost allow them to figure it out for themselves, figure out a new movement strategy, and figure out how to get themselves into better positions and out of pain.
Awesome. Now that makes a lot of sense. Pain is very complicated, and why we end up. But like you say, if the high percentage of people who play golf have this problem that we need to wonder why. And then if, as practitioners, we can, provide them with some movement variety and, help them get into positions, then that's going to be hopefully beneficial to their pain and their discomfort. But also, to me, it makes sense that if you can get into a better position for your swing, that's, even irregardless of your strength or force application, that should help your swing, your stroke become better, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a kind of case of, okay, if I provide you with better movement or better movement ability, let's say, it may kind of slot in and you may kind of get that automatically, but it may also take a little bit of time, probably take a little bit of work with your swing coach on the range to kind of change your movement pattern for the golf swing to your new movement capability. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, for sure. You might not be able to use that range or that position right off the bat. Now, is there, do you have a go-to if someone comes in with this S-bend, sort of hunched over, butt sticking out? Is there, do you have a go-to sort of drill or something even, that someone could try at home to just sort of...
Yeah, actually, kind of oddly, I'm just finishing up writing an article and filming the videos for pretty much this exact thing. But the little kind of intervention, I suppose, that I came up with was, I think, the first thing in that we kind of need to address is that understanding of where the pelvis is, and also their breathing mechanics. And I think the PRI, the Posture Restoration Institute, kind of breathing resets work really well for that. So there's a couple we do, but the easiest one to visualize is probably just a 90-90 breathing drill. So basically, you're going to have that kind of dead bug position. Your hips are going to be flexed to 90 degrees, and your knees are going to be flexed to 90 degrees. Feet up on a wall, and you can you'll just tilt your pelvis up so that your butt leaves the floor a little bit, so you're kind of biasing that posterior tilt. And then deep inhale through the diaphragm, full exhale, you'll feel the core turn on, you'll feel the glutes turn on, just trying to kind of tone down the muscles that are probably a little bit too active, so get the spine nice and flat, and then up-regulate the glutes and the core and those muscles that need a bit of kind of help from you sitting at a desk all day. Breathing drills alone are a great way just to kind of reset some of that damage. And then from there, it's a kind of a case of making that a bit more dynamic. I love half kneeling positions, because I think if you get in a half kneeling position and do it well, so again, squeeze the glutes, squeeze the abs, and posteriorly tilt that pelvis, half kneeling is a great hip flexor stretch. Even if you do nothing else other than stand in that position, it's a great hip flexor stretch.
So half kneeling, you're talking like a lunge, or you're talking about sort of when you're out in external rotation?
The bottom position of a split squat,
right?
Basically. So if you're in that position and you can kind of posteriorly tilt the pelvis, you will feel a stretch on the hip flexor. So I've got a hip flexor stretch in there, but in a relatively stable position, and I can now move in that position as well. So there's hundreds of exercises we can do in that position. We can do kind of shoulder wise TWs. If you're for shoulder health, I like, if we're kind of talking S posture guy, I'll probably do a kind of chop or a lift, a kettlebell lift, like diagonal pattern from one side to the other. That, again, I'm getting core activation there. I've got my hip flexor stretch. That's an awesome thing to do. Doesn't have to be heavy at all. And then I'm going to go over to the wall and use a wall hip hinge drill, really. I could do that with a dowel as well. Just teach them to kind of bend with neutral spine and bend from the hips. Obviously, if you think about golf posture, so you're going to bend from the hips, you're going to push the butt back and to get the club down towards the ball. That is basically a hip hinge, If guys hip hinge by anteriorly tilting their pelvis and kind of bending over, like you're saying, creating that S shape, they're not all of a sudden gonna not hip hinge like that because there's a golf club there. That's the posture they're going to end up in when they're swinging the golf club. So yeah, we're just going to teach them a bodyweight hip hinge and give them the feedback and give them the understanding of how that works and what positions they're in and what positions we'd like them to be in instead. And I like that intervention because I think you can have, a golf pro could go and do that all bodyweight. They could go and do that and just kind of reset that. And help them improve technique a little bit quicker. The golfer themselves, the athlete, could do that kind of throughout the day, could do that as a warm-up before they go and play golf. And then also me as the strength coach, I can come in and I can do the breathing drill and I can load up the chop pretty heavy and I can load the hip hinge and turn it into a deadlift, So that I feel like that little series works quite well, hopefully, just because it's so versatile, There's an awful lot of ways I can use those general exercises.
I think that makes a lot of sense, yeah. So we're starting on the floor, sort of laying on the back, and then getting to that half-kneeling bottom of the lunge position, and then going into, something else. I like that. And so you're essentially, you're trying to keep that rib cage down would be another way to sort of
basically,
think about that.
I'm trying to keep, so if you kind of keep the rib cage down or canister position, so keep the rib cage and the pelvis facing each other. Right. There's loads of cues you can kind of use, but yeah, basically I'm teaching that position on the floor, then I'm teaching it in half kneeling, then I'm teaching it in essentially their golf posture. And I can kind of load that up to drive strength and power, like I said, or I can use that as a warm up or a teaching tool before they go and swing the golf club.
Awesome. Alrighty. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I think we've covered this idea that there's a general preparation and there's certainly some sport specificity in there, but that getting stronger and thinking about just sort of being healthy and having that range of motion and that symmetry. I think we've hit a lot of those topics today. Was there anything else? Let us know. I believe you have a couple new things coming out and stuff. We'll definitely link to your post you just mentioned, so I'll bug you for that here in the next week.
Okay,
but
cool.
what else do you have? If people go to your website at strongergolf.co.uk,
yep.
What can they find there? What's coming down the pipe?
Okay, so at the moment, you kind of go on the website. There's a heck of a lot of free content in the form of blog posts and stuff, going back quite a few years now. And there's a kind of email sign up there that'll give you about a half an hour video. It'll give you access to that video if you kind of sign up there. That'll take you through a lot of the stuff we talked about today in a bit more detail, kind of showing you the exercises I use. And things like that. And then there's online coaching services offered on there, so kind of bespoke online coaching. We'll do movement screens with you over Skype, and I'll send you programs through Google Drive, and then we'll kind of interact on a weekly basis and do form checks and recovery analytics and stuff like that. So that's on there. If you want to sign up for that, awesome. And then kind of down the pipeline, in a week or so, we should have what I'm calling the starter program, which is a kind of a little bit like we talked about today, the basics, what would a beginner that comes in the gym do. That's a PDF that kind of runs through exactly that, really. So yeah, ABCs are exactly what that client would need, just to give them a lot of what we talked about today is movement context and kind of teaching them the positions they're in and the positions we'd like them to be in and how that translates to their golf swing. And yeah, that program is kind of the ABCs, if you like, of how we do that. And then beyond that, we're kind of going to move the online coaching program on a little bit and offer some group online coaching for the kind of weekend golfers and competitive athletes and the senior golfers, and kind of start breaking people up that way and offer some more specific training programs that way. So quite a bit coming up
great.
soon.
Yeah, and you're very active on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and that's Stronger Golf at Twitter Stronger Golf at Instagram and Facebook.
Yep.
And then Stronger_Golf
Yep.
on Twitter.
Yep, that's the one. Perfect.
Perfect. Alrighty. Well, thank you very much, Nick. I wish you all the best, and hopefully we'll connect. We might be back in the UK here in the next little while. So
yeah, definitely. Let me know. And pleasure talking to you guys.
Hey guys, before you go, we just wanted to have one quick word from our sponsor, Health IQ.
Health IQ is a life insurance company that helps the consummate athlete like you save money on your life insurance.
To find out more, you can check out healthiq.com/CAPOD. That's CAPOD for all the details and to take a free quiz. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Consummate Athlete Podcast. To check out all of the show notes for this show, go to consummateathlete.com, and to follow along with our various adventures on the social medias, you can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/consummateathlete, or follow me, Molly Herford, at Molly J. Herford on Twitter and Instagram.
And I'm at Peter Glassford on Twitter and Instagram.
And if you could do us a huge favor and rate and review the podcast over on iTunes, that helps us bring on more guests, get more episodes out, and do more cool stuff. So we would be forever grateful.
And if you're looking for coaching for endurance sport or just for health and wellness, you can check out smartathlete.ca. And for amazing outdoor content, you can check out theoutdooredit.com.
Aw, honey.
And that's theoutdooredit.com for Molly Herford's writing and all things outdoors.
All right. Thank you so much for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time.